Hey everyone, welcome to today's explainer, where we are going to absolutely shatter that old, tired stereotype of the quiet wallflower. Look, if you've ever felt completely misunderstood because of how quickly your social battery drains, or, if you're constantly trying to figure out a friend who just seems to retreat from the world without warning, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're unpacking some seriously fascinating psychology. Specifically, we're going to look at the massive difference between avoiding social situations because of genuine social discomfort versus avoiding them just because you have a deep-seated love for your routine and planning. Because, as you'll see, treating all introverts like they're exactly the same is a huge communication mistake. Let's get right into it.
To kick things off, I've got to ask you, what is an introvert really? Think about it for a second. Do you immediately just picture like a shy kid daydreaming in the corner at a lively party? Or maybe that brilliant but quiet student who never spoke up in class? For decades, that's been the default image society fed us, right? This idea of a timid, antisocial hermit who's terrified of making small talk. We so often equate introversion with just being shy or lacking confidence. But the reality? It's way more complex, and honestly a whole lot more interesting than just a lack of socializing. So researchers over at Wellesley College actually nailed this down. The true definition of an introvert is simply someone who fundamentally needs time by themselves to recharge and avoid becoming emotionally drained. It literally has nothing to do with hating people. The absolutely crucial point here is that introversion is entirely about how we recharge our emotional batteries. And think about that battery for a second. What does it actually feel like when it hits zero? For an introvert, a dead battery doesn't just mean needing a nap. It means feeling intensely irritated. It means sensory overload, where lights and sounds just feel physically jarring. It's a heavy brain fog that makes even basic conversation feel like lifting weights. They aren't retreating because they don't like you. They're retreating because their internal power supply is flashing red.
And that brings us to a massive realization. Section 1. The Introversion Spectrum. That same Wellesley College research acknowledges that there are actually 4 completely different types of introverts based on their distinct needs. First up, the social introvert. They actually love small groups, they just get drained eventually. Then, the thinking introvert. These are your daydreamers. Their inner monologue is basically a rock concert. Then we have the anxious introvert, and finally, the restrained introvert. Now for the rest of this explainer, we are putting a massive spotlight on those last 2. Why? Because they are the absolute most commonly misunderstood profiles of the bunch. From the outside, they look identical, but internally, totally different operating systems. Let's dive right into our first spotlight, the anxious introvert. Okay, think about this for a second. Do you know someone, maybe it's you, who comes home from a perfectly nice, fun night out, hits the pillow, and then proceeds to obsessively replay every single social encounter in their head? They're just lying there staring at the ceiling, analyzing what they said and agonizing over what they should have said. It's what's known as a social hangover. The party's over, but their brain is working overtime, critiquing every minor interaction. If that heavy emotional weight sounds familiar, you've just met the anxious introvert.
And because their minds are relentlessly ruminating on their public behavior, they naturally become highly uncomfortable in new or large social situations. It's so important to understand the why here. An anxious introvert's brain is running at max capacity, right? They're processing micro-expressions, worrying about being judged, hyper-monitoring their own reactions. That cognitive load is profoundly exhausting. It drains their batteries so fast that they will aggressively crave solitude, sometimes even when they're hanging out with their absolute best friends. It's a deep social discomfort born entirely from the sheer exhaustion of overanalyzing everything around them.
Now hold on a second, because we need to make a really vital distinction here. It's super easy to confuse the personality trait of anxious introversion with a clinical condition like social anxiety disorder, and we absolutely cannot mix these two up. Anxious introverts want solitude to escape the mental exhaustion of their own rumination. But if social situations are triggering strong, unavoidable physical reactions, we're talking literal shaking, a spiking heart rate, sweating, or severe nausea, that is a clinical red flag. That's a sign of social anxiety disorder, and that requires professional medical attention. Anxious introversion is just a personality type. Social anxiety disorder is a debilitating condition.
All right, let's completely shift gears to our second profile, the restrained introvert. These are what you might call your classic introverts next door. Unlike the anxious type we just talked about, restrained introverts aren't really nervous, and they definitely aren't losing sleep over a slightly awkward joke they made at dinner. Instead, they get highly uncomfortable if they are rushed. They operate on a completely different baseline tempo. They're deeply reserved, highly thoughtful, and they fundamentally loathe spontaneous change. To really thrive, they need a cognitive runway, ample forewarning to mentally transition from one thing to the next. They'll absolutely go out and be super social, but strictly on the condition that they've had enough time to adjust their internal pace.
Just picture their absolute perfect day. It starts with a very, very slow wake-up. And research actually backs this up. It's not laziness. Restrained introverts experience a literal physical and mental inertia in the mornings. It's genuinely hard to get moving, so they need that slow morning runway. By the afternoon, they find deep comfort in their routines. Maybe that's quiet yoga, reading a book, or happily binging a show. And the evening? Sure, socializing is great, as long as it was planned days ago. They are grounded folks who rely heavily on a predictable, steady pace to keep that emotional battery charged.
So let's put these two side by side. The contrast, anxious versus restrained.
Imagine two different introverts bailing on a spontaneous Friday night party. From the outside, it looks exactly the same. They both politely say no thanks and stay home. But internally, worlds apart. One stays home because of intense social discomfort. That's the anxious introvert, dodging the heavy cognitive load of rumination and nervousness. The other one stays home simply because they love their routine. That's the restrained introvert. They aren't nervous at all. You just didn't give them enough advance notice to adjust their cognitive runway. And they'd honestly rather just do their planned evening yoga. Assuming these two people are staying home for the same reason is a huge mistake.
Which leads us perfectly to the real-world application here, communicating your introvert needs.
Figuring out which specific type you or your loved ones fall into is literally like getting an operational manual. It helps you clearly communicate what you need, which fundamentally strengthens your relationships. Think about it. If your partner is an anxious introvert, they might need gentle reassurance after a party. You can literally just tell them, "Hey, you did great today, nobody thought that joke was weird." But if your partner is a restrained introvert, they don't need reassurance about their social skills. They just need you to give them an extra day of warning before you change your weekend plans. Phrasing an invite as, "Hey, want to grab food next Tuesday?" works absolute wonders for the restrained introvert. Understanding this nuance completely transforms how we connect with each other.
So I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on today. We've seen that retreating from the world isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. It's the difference between escaping social discomfort and rumination versus just loving the slow predictability of a routine. So, looking at the psychology we unpacked today, which type are you? Do you crave solitude to escape the social hangover, or do you just love the cozy comfort of your daily pace?